Thank you, Jenny. So, welcome from my side as well. My name is Dominik van Nagen. I'm the product manager for Process Life and some ARIS products. And I'm very happy to have this session today with Sandy Kemsley about BPA as a service and to explain you more how especially cloud and social collaboration are changing the space of business process analysis. So before I'm going to hand over to Sandy, I first want to give you a brief overview on Software AG for those who may be not so familiar with Software AG actually. So Software AG is since a long time in the market, so for over 40 years, and I believe that it really gives us proof that we are on the right track with our vision, because the vision of Software AG is that we want to help organizations, companies, public organizations to transform actually into digital enterprises. What that actually means, I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes. I just want to highlight a few facts, because with more than 5,000 employees, we are striving for that goal. We are achieving more than 1 billion in revenue, and especially it's important when we want to achieve such a goal that we reach a critical mass. And as you can see, more than 2.5 million users are actually using tools from Software AG, and more than 2 million developers are using our tools since more than 40 years. So I believe that's pretty strong. So when we have a look at our vision, especially, the question is, why do we want to achieve that vision? Because we want to achieve a customer-centric enterprise. That's the basic vision which stands behind all that. We see that, of course, every customer wants to achieve some kind of a customer centricity, wants to align goals, wants to align processes towards customers want, because in the end, the customer are the ones that are paying for your service, are paying for your processes. And in order to achieve that goal, you have on the one side, of course, the partners you're working with, you have the other side employees that are working in your companies. And we see typically a situation which has been called by the analyst Gartner, which is some kind of that the IT is shaped of some kind of systems of records. Or I call it always some kind of, you have legacy systems. You have systems which are very strong, that you have invented in the past years, that have reached a certain kind of maturity. And the question is, at the end of the day, how can you achieve agility? How can you achieve innovation in your company in order to be fast enough to adapt, fast enough to change, fast enough to transform your company in order to design a digital company, to design a company that can deliver at the end of the day the best value that your customer actually needs. So that's our basic situation that we have. That's the situation we're starting with Software AG. And at the same time, it's quite important because there are some disruptive technologies, disruptive trends in the market which are shaping IT application landscape as of now. So we see, and I believe that all of you have heard that already, so we see that especially those four forces are shaping the IT applications as we've seen it, and this will go on within the next years. So there's on the one hand, of course, the mobile section, so applications must be made available by mobile. Maybe you have customer touch points which are based on mobile applications and mobile processes. On the other hand, you have, which is a major topic for today as well, we see that applications are getting more and more social, which is not only in the social media area, which is of course also in the area that applications, processes, people are working together on a better goal, which what we call such a kind of social collaboration. And this paradigm, this typical pattern gets into all application systems as well. Then we have the major trend, of course, big data, get more out of the data that you're collecting, be able to get better decisions by making a pattern recognition, find out about what is relevant. And yeah, at the end of the day, you want to get use of this data in order to make better decisions, to align to your customer, to find out about what customers actually need. And then we have, I think that all of you are very familiar with that as well, which is the term of cloud. Technology is changing the way we are offering. Technology is changing the way how customers consume applications is changing. So cloud technology is completely reshaping the market, offering easier deployment, lower total cost of ownership. And those four trends are basically basically, let's say, changing what you do with the applications in your own company, changing how the applications have to change for the future, and basically, of course, what we do in terms of an offering for our customers. So when we now talk about, let's say, the concrete pillars or the concrete ramps that we are offering, and especially the first one is important for today's call, today's WebEx, because this shapes the context, gives you the context. The digital transformation, in order to be more customer-centric, always starts with understanding what you want to do, understanding what you want to change, being able to describe the change, to plan that, and to make that in a very structured way. So you need to think about your business processes. How do your to-be business process look like? You have to think about which goals you want to achieve within your to-be process. You want to measure your KPIs. You want to find out about how organizational structures look like. So that's all what we bundle under the term of collaborative process analysis. That's one important ramp that sets the context for today's WebEx as well. If you've done that, if you planned your architecture, if you know what you want to achieve, you have to think of how can you, let's say, make this change happen by knowing what you need to phase in an application system, business processes, by knowing as well what you need to phase out in your IT application landscape, for instance. So portfolio management is a very crucial piece in order to plan the change, being able to monitor that and to reach the final state of a digital enterprise. Then when you are changing, when you want to achieve a digital enterprise, it's often about being more effective, being more efficient, and when you think of that, you always come at the point that you want to reduce frictions in your business processes, you want to automate your business processes, you want to integrate the data, you want to integrate across different application systems. So process automation and integration is the next ramp that Software AG is offering. And then the final thing, and I just mentioned on the slide before, big data, getting more out of the data, being able to visualize relevant dependencies out of your data, having pattern recognitions, and finding out about the right decisions to transform your company is what we are offering with intelligent business operations and big data. So this is a brief overview on what Software AG does, which vision we have, which vision we are striving for every day, and this sets the context now for the presentation today. And I'm very happy to welcome Sandy, who is an independent analyst in the market, who's a very well-known expert. And yeah, I want to welcome Sandy again, and I want to hand over to you now. So Sandy, just go ahead.
Thanks, Dominic. It's great to be here today. I've been involved in BPM for a long time, and certainly a big part of that has been around the business process analysis side of things. So it's, although I do often look at how we take the processes that we analyze and then automate them in some way, everything has to start with the analysis. We have to look at what are our processes doing and find better ways to do things before we can decide what we need to automate. So today I wanted to talk about bringing together a number of the trends that are happening in business process analysis, or BPA, as well as in the broader BPM market, and in particular looking at cloud and social collaboration. Now, social collaboration is one of the things that I've seen in the wider BPM market space since probably 2006 or so. I started to see some of the characteristics emerging of how we were starting to be more social, of how we were starting to put more things online in the cloud. And I remember doing some presentations at the time where these concepts were very strange to people, and they didn't understand why they would want to do these things. What we're seeing now, however, is that in many other areas, not just in business processes, but in all of the consumer software that we see, in many other enterprise software instances, we are starting to get benefits from using the cloud as our infrastructure and also using social collaboration in order to improve the decisions that we make. What I'm going to look at today is how really we have the business process analysis, and then why cloud and social can really bring this together to make a really good partnership between these three things. And then I'm going to look at we'll look at some use cases as well. So just to take a brief look at what I'm going to cover today, I want to talk about, just to kick off just these three things together, and then look at each of them individually. So why we do business process analysis and what are the benefits, because we're then going to look at social collaboration and moving to the cloud, and how those can really emphasize those benefits. So we have to start out with why are we doing BPA in the first place, and then how social and cloud can help us with those. And then I'll finish up with some use cases. I have 3 that I've done in a little bit of detail, and then a few others that I'll mention as well at the end. One thing is that I did write a white paper to go with this, so you can get this in much more detail when you get the follow-up link from the webinar. You'll be able to get a link to the white paper as well and kind of see what's at all of these themes in a little bit more detail. So if we take a look at BPA, social, and cloud together and why we want to bring these things together, it's really in the past we found that BPA was done mostly by very specialized process analysts or architects, and there wasn't a lot of involvement from other stakeholders and process participants. In part, this was because the tools were a little bit difficult to use unless you had some training on them, but those tools might also be a little bit expensive to put on everyone's desktop. So what would happen is that the analysis might get done, and then it would be possibly put into a PDF form or printed out or put into even to Visio, and then emailed around to different people to get their comments, and maybe people would understand it or not, and then you'd get comments back from many different people, which you would then have to incorporate into your process designs or into your process analysis. So the social things were being done, but they were being done in an ad hoc way that didn't work very well for how people really need to work together in a better way. So we're going to look at now just how we can change that, and we can really improve this by bringing in the stakeholders in much more of a collaborative analysis and design process. And then basing this on the cloud, if we have easy-to-use cloud-based tools, then we can remove the barriers to participation. So people won't get a big, complicated diagram that they don't understand. They'll get a view of a process model or a business representation that they can understand and that makes sense to them. So this is why we want to bring these things together, and you'll see that they really do mesh very well. So if we take a look at the value of business process analysis in the first place, so this is where we want to start and then build on this with the social collaboration and the cloud standpoint. So if you're still trying to justify a business process analysis project inside your organization, or you have one started but aren't sure whether you want to spread it out or not, there's some, certainly I've gone through a few of the ideas here, and then I cover this in quite a bit of detail in the white paper about what the value is that you get from business process analysis. The first thing that I have here is that it's business-led. This is really not an IT-focused solution at all. So BPA is not something that's IT-focused. This is where business analysts and users work together. They're using a BPA tool, which could be something very simple, or it could be something with much more capabilities. They want to document and analyze the processes, redesign them, streamline them, and so on. Now, what will happen in many cases is that process will go on to become automated in some way. So it will go on to become part of a BPM system where the steps may get automated, it might get integrated with other systems, but there's many, many processes that we have in our organizations that never get automated. They're about manual procedures, or they might cover across a number of different systems that don't include BPM systems. So although BPM systems do have some sort of process modeling in them, we are probably looking, when we're using BPA tools, we're looking at a much broader scope of our business. So, and this is something, again, that the business is looking at as it's trying to redesign these processes, make them more efficient, improve the quality, and really as a precursor to automating, or maybe just to make adjustments to manual procedures and so on. And I think that's the key thing then. As I said, what we do find in the BPM systems is that they will have process modeling capabilities, and some of them are starting to build in other modeling capabilities for organizational models and data models and so on. But they really don't provide the full analytical capabilities that we'll have in a BPA tool. And as I mentioned, it's like a majority of the BPA projects that I see never get automated in a BPMS anyway, so they would never be modeled in a BPMS. So what we have instead is the rise of these dedicated BPA and in some cases some enterprise architecture modeling tools that the business analysts then use to create and optimize the business models. We have many more types of models going on. This is, as I said, for documentation and visualization, so not just for automation purposes, with the whole idea that we'd really like to have this analysis and have a visualization of the processes to give us a common understanding between all of the business people and, in fact, the IT people who might be involved here. We're going to look for process bottlenecks and weaknesses, identify potential savings, so all kinds of the process improvement analysis that we might need to go through at this point. And as I said, some of the times this process analysis, sometimes this process improvement can be done through just manual procedures. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be making changes to systems or implementing something in a BPMS. This is really about having a better understanding of our business and how our business works. So that, you know, a big benefit of this sort of shared understanding as well is when not everybody is in the same place and you have multiple versions of processes across, for example, different offices within your organization. So one of the reasons that you use a BPA tool in order to model these processes is so that you can then standardize the processes across from one part of the organization to another. Now, we're going to look at how cloud and social can push that idea even further, but I think that just having the BPA tool in general and using this as a way to model and improve the processes gives you the potential to share these across the different parts of the organization and have some standardization. So from the analysis standpoint, we could be looking at multiple systems, we could be looking at manual procedures. We have possibly a number of different complex analysis techniques that we're using. We could have simulation, we could have value stream analysis, SIPOC, risk analysis, process mining, all kinds of things that we might do in the context of business process analysis that are really required to have a specialized tool for. So when we look at BPA as a separate category of tool from a BPM system, there's a great deal of value that it brings in terms of this shared understanding, in terms of the broader scope of documentation and visualization, and in terms of the more robust tools that it provides in order to do process analysis. So let's take a look at how we can amp this up a little bit and start to look at collaborative BPA. So BPA, as we've said, is really about having that business-led analysis, documentation, visualization, and then some analysis for process improvement. But what happens when we start to do this in a little bit more collaborative way? Instead of just having the business analysts and some specialized subject matter experts involved in this, what if we got a lot of different people involved? Now, we're seeing, definitely the idea of collaboration within enterprises has been growing, and for the past several years, collaboration within enterprises and even outside enterprises to their customers or their business partners has really been increasing, with the idea that good ideas can come from anywhere. You don't have to have a particular technical skill or you don't have to have a particular job title in order to be able to provide some insight into how a process might work better or how a business might work better. So the idea is that we want to have social production, in other words, a collaborative co-creation. Many people get involved. They could be completely, just business users who don't know anything other than just their step that they do in a business. They could be very technical people. It could be anything in between. It can be customers, however it might be. We'd really like to get this cross-silo collaboration so that we get ideas from everywhere and bring these in a way that improves the processes. The reason that we want to do this is really to get more innovation happening in our business as well, because if you are working in your business area and you start to model out your processes, you'll tend to model it the way it's always been done, and that is definitely a fault that we all have in humans. We're comfortable with something and we want it to be the same way, and we might make some small incremental changes to improve our processes, but we might not be able to properly see the true innovation that could be done if we look at it in a completely different way. And that's the advantage of bringing in other people here, is if you bring other people in from other departments, from other types of skills, from other levels in your organization, from outside your organization, then you can start to get really quite a bit of innovation going on between these things. So that's pretty key to have the number of people involved and the variation of people involved. Now you'll also find is that if you bring in different parts of your organization in order to collaborate on business process analysis, is that people will start to see the similarities between some of the processes that they have in different areas. And they'll find out that a process in one area and a process in another area is nearly identical, and maybe they could standardize those and combine that function together, thereby making the entire thing more efficient. So there's, a lot of opportunities for reuse as soon as different parts of the organization start looking at how each other is doing things across the organization. So there's some pretty cool sort of sparks of knowledge that can go back and forth. Now, the other thing that's important is that as soon as we start to get people collaborating within a BPA tool, is that we're also working on a shared model. We're not taking Visio diagrams or PowerPoints or printed documents and sending them around from one person to another. What we're doing is sharing the process models and the business models that we've created and letting people see what's there and comment or participate in the design directly on this same model. That way, everybody's looking at the same version. There's this shared documentation, and this is really where we get our sort of tribal knowledge becoming our institutional memory of the business. Now, that because everybody's sharing a model, it doesn't mean that they have to have the same view on that model. And this is what we find in many cases is that technical or more technical people might want to have one view, and less technical people or those who might just be adding comments would have a very different view. So the view and, in fact, the functionality will be dependent on the role that the participant plays in the business process analysis. And that's kind of a cool thing as well, is that you can have this, a very different sort of, a very different view and a very different sort of functionality, but it's a single model there. So somebody commenting on it, those comments will be seen in the appropriate context by all of the people who are viewing that shared model. So that's, you can also have, in many cases with collaborative BPA, as you can in other collaborative environments, is people can opt in if they're interested in a particular model. They don't have to be invited as a participant necessarily. They can say, oh, hey, I'm interested in that particular model or in how that process works. I'd like to follow along so I can see that, or maybe I want to make a comment on it. So again, you get people who find and they're discovering what process work or what process analysis work is being done inside the organization, and they're actually contributing their own knowledge without necessarily being asked. And in some cases, you get people who you wouldn't have even thought to participate in your process analysis show an interest in it and be able to add something that's quite valuable. So what we really find then, as I said, the whole thing around collaboration is, one is that you can make the work much less for the analysts. Instead of them having to go out and interview everybody and find everything, you have the people who are actually doing the work designing the process and saying what it is and what it isn't and what it should be. But also we find is that the more people that participate in a collaboration, whether it's collaborative BPA or any other kind of collaboration, the more that you get new ways of solving problems, and that the people from the different areas of the enterprise bring these different perspectives. And this is if you've done any sort of reading on collaboration or any work with social collaboration tools, either consumer or enterprise collaboration tools, this is what's called the network effect. And it's when a tool or a system becomes more valuable the more people use it. So what happens is the more people that you have involved in collaboration in your business process analysis, the more value that this is going to bring to your enterprise in general. The processes are going to be higher quality, and you're also going to improve the awareness of the business processes across the organization, which makes change management easier as you start to change them. So a lot of benefits that we see to collaborative BPA. Many of these are true of any kind of collaborative software, but especially around collaborative BPA, where we might be looking at changing the way that we do processes in the organization. Now the next thing, so we've looked at BPA and we've looked at the collaborative social side. Well, what if we want to expand that? So let's move things to the cloud now. We have collaboration, we have our business process analysis tool. What if we could let anybody, anywhere, participate in the BPA? So they no longer have to be in our office or on our office network. We really want to democratize this so that anybody can come in from anywhere. You might have remote locations, people who connect remotely from a home office or a remote office. You might have people outside your organization, possibly customers or business partners that you're doing work with. You might have a number of different people who you'd like to collaborate on your process analysis. And by moving things to the cloud, you enable that. You let them easily participate without having to VPN into your network, without having to have any special security clearance, and in many cases without having to have anything installed on their desktop. So the tools that we're seeing emerging on the cloud for collaborative co-creation, especially in the area of BPA, is these support multiple operating systems and browsers. You don't have to have one particular version of Internet Explorer on Windows or anything like that, but you can work across multiple operating systems and browsers. Many also support mobile devices. So this is kind of important in that now you don't have to have a particular configuration. You don't have to be in a particular place. You don't have to have a login to somebody's network in order to participate in this. You can participate wherever you are, wherever you can connect to the public internet. You can participate in this. So this is really key when we want to take that collaboration and expand it beyond our internal collaboration and push that out to external collaboration, or possibly to far-flung offices that don't have good connectivity to the home office but might have good connectivity to the public internet. So this is one of the reasons that we want to look at moving to the cloud. Now the second thing about moving to the cloud is the elasticity of the infrastructure. This is important with any kind of cloud enterprise software, and I'm sure you've seen this in a number of different scenarios for things other than business process analysis. But we find that this is especially important with process analysis in that the ability to start small and then grow and shrink dynamically is really important here. This is, if you look at how a BPA project works, they typically start small with a couple of analysts, and then you're going to scale up to a larger team, and then you're going to add in a bunch of reviewers and commenters and people maybe from other organizations, and all this will grow and grow. And then at some point, you'll decide to take those processes and put them into effect somehow. Maybe they get transferred over to a BPMS for automation. Maybe it results in some changes in manual procedures. But what happens is that now, all of a sudden, you have many less people working on these processes. So you'd like to be able to scale back down so that you're not paying for those licenses. The elasticity of the cloud is important, yes, for the ability to grow very quickly, but also for the ability to shrink very quickly. So you can say, I don't need those 100 licenses anymore, or those 1,000 licenses, or however many they are. You want to be able to scale that up and down as you need it, and not just ever grow more and more the way that you might with on-premise software, where you have to buy more and more licenses, even though you might not be using them. It really allows for a much more, in many cases, a much more reliable and highly available structure as well. I know we like to think that our own data centers and IT departments, things never fail there, but in fact they do. And in many cases, the cloud providers are much better at keeping systems up and running than our internal IT departments are, because that's their business, really. So we do end up with systems that can be quite reliable, very highly available, quite secure, much more so than if we were exposing our own systems for use by other people outside of our organization. Because again, these companies are building their reputation on their ability to be secure, reliable, and highly available. So those are, a couple of things around the infrastructure here. From a pricing standpoint, it's typically, cloud is priced by subscription, so you'll pay on a per user per month basis. That means, again, as you scale up and scale down, your prices will scale up and scale down depending on, or your costs will scale up and scale down depending on how many people that you have involved at any given time. So the expenditure then is really about the actual number of people that are involved at any time, rather than the maximum number over the life of the project. If you were buying on-premise software, if you had to buy everybody a license to on-premise software for a BPA tool or any other tool, then you would have to buy as many licenses that you needed for the maximum people at any time, and then you own those licenses, and you pay maintenance on those licenses and so on. This way, you can really just scale it up and down and pay for the users that are actually being involved at any given time. And the last point, and this is sometimes true and sometimes not true, but IT involvement is really not required here. In many cases with cloud systems, you can go out, you can start using it right away since you don't have to install anything on the desktop. There's no connections to your internal systems. There's very little sort of security concerns in any way about the information that you might be putting there. You really don't have to have IT involved at all. Now, there are more complex cloud enterprise software systems besides BPA that might have links to internal systems, and those would require IT involvement. But for a shared documentation and design tool and discovery tool like BPA, you really don't have to have IT involved at all. So you can probably go out and get a trial version, pay for it out of your departmental expenses on a credit card, and then eventually when you want to scale up is you might need to look at getting your purchasing involved and so on to do that. But in most cases you can get these things kicked off without having to have anyone involved and just at least try it out and see how it works in your organization. So that's what going to the cloud gives us in terms of the infrastructure then, is we can start really small without having IT involved, probably without even having managerial approval, and then grow it up and shrink it down as we need it with this pricing that matches how many people that we have at any given time, and then have this very available and reliable infrastructure. So those are the kind of advantages we can expect from the cloud, that, and as I mentioned on the previous slide about expanding collaboration. So what I'd like to do now, I've sort of covered why we want to do this and why we have the benefits here of BPA in general, the social collaboration, and the cloud, moving it all onto the cloud. I want to walk you through a couple of different scenarios in which this works particularly well. Now these aren't the only things you can use it for, but definitely it's something that's you might want to consider if you fit into one of these use cases. So the first one, and this is probably the one that's used initially by most of the people who start out with these collaborative cloud-based BPA tools, is you have a multinational organization. Your company has offices in many different countries, but maybe you don't have very good connectivity between those offices, and certainly not enough to be supporting the types of things that you want to do on this. Or you have remote workers, people who who work for your company but might work from a home office, or maybe they're salespeople who are on the road, or whatever it is. So in that case, you'd like to have BPA as a service, as cloud-based service that sits in the middle, and all of your offices can interconnect through that. So people can come in from, London or Paris or Sydney or DC or, all of these places that I have kind of represented here. This is like a little game to see if you can recognize all the cities from their icons here. But everybody can come in from different places and interact, again, with those shared models. So you can have people collaborating from anywhere. The BPA tools don't require synchronous collaboration. They don't require that everybody have to be online at the same time. They only require that people have access to these same models. They can come in, they can add their comments, maybe they can make some changes to the model, and then other people will log in when they get up 6 hours later, and they will see what changes have been made and can track those changes and then add back their comments. If people happen to be available online at the same time, that's fine, but they don't have to be. This is really about asynchronous collaboration, not having people all in the same room at the same time. What I have seen in cases where people do use BPA tools is that although many of them, these collaborative cloud-based ones, although many of them do support a chat function or something like that, is often what will happen if people are online at the same time, they'll also start up a conference call or something, or a Skype call, so that they can talk to each other while they're going through, and then they have a shared view of the models as they're talking through the things that they might want to change in there. So definitely the multinational organization is one of the areas that we want to look at. You might have process designers and reviewers in multiple countries. You really are trying to ease the access and ease the burden on your own IT infrastructure to be able to support this in multiple places. If you have an on-premise solution, you'll end up having to get licenses in all of these different countries, get them installed for whatever the on-premise system might be. You might need to get multiple IT departments involved, multiple managers involved for approval, and so on. Working in the cloud just kind of makes it easier to be able to get you up and running a little bit faster. Now, the second use case is when you have external participants. So this could be when you have, and this is a large organization, so if you work for a bank or a manufacturing company or whatever, and that's you over there on the left with the big building. And you will do most of this, although you will still use the BPA as a service for your modeling internally. You also want to have different people that might be involved here. So you could have, a consultant involved. That's the guy sitting under the palm tree up at the top with his laptop. You might have other small businesses involved. You could have the contractors of various sort, any kinds of other business partners or customers that you might want to have involved in the process analysis. So again, having the cloud-based BPA lets you do this without having to have VPN configurations, without having to have people like with logins to your networks or anything. It provides all of that for you. Is people just need to have a login to that BPA service, and then they can share the models with you and can then add their own comments or make changes to the models. As I mentioned, then one of the nice things about these collaborative tools is they allow for different views and different permissions for different kinds of users that you would have of it. So you might have a customer who could only see a high-level view of the model and add some comments to it, or you might have a consultant who's actually helping you with the process design who has full process editing capabilities. And this is going to depend on the class of user that they are and how you think they might be able to contribute to the project. The third use case, and this is a kind of interesting one, this is turning it around a little bit. If you have a consultancy and you have multiple customers, which might be large customers, and you'd like to get them each kicked off on their own BPA project. So if you are a consultancy doing business process analysis together with your customers, using BPA as a service is a great way to get them started. First of all, you can share the process analysis with them. You can go back and forth and collaboratively do things. You can make changes to the process and maybe just give them view permissions, and then eventually, gradually let them take it over and work with it directly. The idea, though, is that you can see on this my little drawing here is that you might have multiple customers. So let's say you have a bank and you have a hospital and you have a manufacturing company. Well, you don't want them all using the same, you don't want them to be able to see each other's models. So it's not like they're coming into your own systems and risk seeing each other's models. You want to be able to set up kind of different separate virtual rooms where you're collaborating with them where you see their sets of models. So it's kind of restricting it on a project basis or a client basis and no risk that things can bleed over from one to the other. So this is an interesting one in that you really get the benefits of the easy sharing and then also the easy scalability, because a consultant would want to scale up as a client comes on and then maybe scale back down again when the project is finished. But you also have very little control as a consultant over the environment of your customers. So when the tables are turned the other way, on the previous slide where we had a big company and then they had external contributors to the BPA, a big company can often come in and say, oh no, we want you to run VPN, we want you to use our tools. A consultancy typically can't do that. They would have to provide something that these companies can do without having to make any changes to their infrastructure or the way that their users access things online. So the BPA as a service really lowers the barriers that they have to getting online and being able to work together with these process models. And as I mentioned, in particular with this case, the elasticity is really good. You can also want to be looking at, if you have this sort of scenario, you want to make sure that you can easily hand over an entire project to the control of your customer. So if that that hospital in the middle there, if they want to take over and do their own modeling in the future without you involved, you want to be able to have a way for them to take ownership of that project, and then you can disconnect yourself from that and not have to pay for their licenses anymore as you go on from there. So a lot of different kind of scenarios here that we've seen. There's a number of other ones, and I talk about these a bit more. Well, I talk about all of these and then a few more in the white paper. Things like higher education institutions. So a number of universities, they're teaching business analysis of various sorts, including business process analysis. Think about expanding and contracting the number of users in a cloud environment as your classroom size grows and shrinks over the semester, or maybe you're not offering the classes at all during a certain semester, so you don't need to have the licenses in there. And again, like as with a consultancy, you can't really control the computing environment that the students have, so you need to make sure that you have something that can run anywhere on any operating system in any kind of browser. There was another example that I go into in the white paper on BPM centers of excellence within an organization too, and about how this often becomes a starting point for standardization and BPA tools that within an organization. So having a scalable cloud-based solution can often be really good for a COE to get started and then be able to scale this up for different subsidiaries, different projects, departments, and so on. So lots of different scenarios here for why this works. It's also the case, and I don't mention it here, but for smaller companies, it's the idea that you can buy these tools, or now they're buy by subscription at a much lower cost. It definitely lowers that particular barrier to getting involved too. So you want to make sure that you can, if you're a smaller company or a mid-sized company, you can get involved here without having a big capital outlay in order to get started. So just to sum up then, I've kind of gone through the BPA and the social and the cloud together, and I really think that they are a perfect partnership, is that we have the analytical capabilities, we have the idea of collaboration through the social concepts, and we have this democratization of access that we get from the cloud. So that bringing these together is, if we really look at how cloud-based social BPA can work, we find that it can completely transform process improvement efforts. You can get started fast, no capital investment, no on-premise installation, get started small and then grow and shrink as you need it, and have collaborators in a lot of different locations and stakeholders that are really at all different kinds of technical and analytical skill levels. So this is, I'm going to be turning back over to Dominic now. Just a reminder, if you have a Q&A, there's a space for the Q&A at the bottom. You can pop your questions in, and I'll hand this back to Dominic now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Great presentation. So especially from my side, I believe I learned a lot as well. So basically, yeah, why BPA as a service is so important, what you can do with the collaboration. And I basically want to stress 3 points, I believe you said as well, because one thing is the transformation, quite important, transformation to change, transformation to differentiate towards your customers. And the question is, of course, how you can do that. And BPA, basically business process analysis, provides you all these means in order to do this transformation. Then you mentioned as well the possibility that you can use this elasticity that you have with the cloud software. So you can be agile, you can lower your total cost of ownership, which is quite important. And then the final thing, and you mentioned in your presentation, good ideas can come from anywhere. I like that very much, and I will take that, if I am allowed to, as a quote for future presentation as well, because I believe that's one of the basic principles for the whole collaboration piece. So why it is important to involve the people, why we need to have, let's say, some kind of a platform infrastructure where we can invite people, where we can give them the capability to follow and so on. So it was a really, really great presentation from my side. And if we switch back now to what I said at the very beginning from the software AG viewpoint, I said transformation for designing and implementing the digital enterprise is our basic goal. And as you can imagine, we are also offering this BPA as a service, what we call Process Live. So Process Live is our product, is especially the product where we are addressing the solutions or the challenges that Sandy just outlined, where we also believe that we can add value to you in order to provide you a BPA as a service solution. And yeah, so it's basically there in order to describe your business processes, to be able to share them with the people, to give them the capability to comment on something, to give a good feedback on that, to get into the redesign of the business processes, so that at the end of the day you can get the best result of your business processes, being able to implement that, share the descriptions of a process to the people who maybe have to manually execute a business process task. So there are many options that you can work with Process Live. So Process Live is now around half a year on the market, so it's we get a great feedback from our customer, and as you can imagine, so it's of course based on our ARIS technology that we have in our product stack. So ARIS, as you know, has shaped the BPA section for around 20 years. So it's some kind of the inventor as well of the BPA section. And beneath the surface of the process life, there's the ARIS technology that gives you all the capabilities that you need in order to implement this, what we call the social collaboration and the business process improvement capability that you can have there. So I don't want to go too much into the detail. Just keep in mind the design, the collaboration, the publishing, the sharing with the people. It's all offered through this process life. And for you, you can just easily start. So as said, it's very crucial to be able to scale up and scale down very quickly to get it quite fast. So it just takes a few minutes for you to get your process live project room, so you can access that through www.processlive.com. You can get there a free trial. So a free trial gives you the option to work with some designers, have some viewers, maybe test it a little bit, find out about how you can use it, leverage it for your own company. And now the important piece is for the first 10 that are going to send now an email to marketing@processlive.com and explain us briefly why you want to leverage Process Live for your own project. We will give to those people a free welcome package, which basically consists of 1 designer and 10 viewers for 3 months. So this gives you already the option to start with your project, to do the modeling, to do the collaboration with the people, and to leverage the Process Live solution for your success and to meet the challenges of today's infrastructure. So basically that's it for today, and we can now hand over or go over to the Q&A session. So you of course always have the option to get in touch with us through the social media channels. So you see again how you can contact us, and if you want, you can now ask questions in the Q&A section. So just go ahead with your questions.
Dominic, I had a question that came from somebody through the private chat window, and he was asking if I had a diagram that shows the functions of BPMS versus BPA, like a Venn diagram kind of thing to show how they overlap and what things are done specifically in each. I don't know if you have something like that specifically for Process Live. Definitely, there's some overlap in functionality, as I talked about, in the ability to create process models. In some cases, you will also see some of the BPM systems will have the ability to do some of analysis capabilities. They might do simulation. They might do a little bit of the lighter weight analysis techniques. And then, of course, the BPM systems have this broad range of automation and integration capabilities that are not covered, that are kind of the runtime capabilities. On the BPA side, however, the things that are typically outside of that would be on the outside of the Venn diagram, so not that you would not typically see in a BPM system, I think are the wide variety of analytical capabilities that you just won't find in a BPMS. Things like the value stream analysis and SIPOC analysis and so on, and also the collaborative co-design. Although in some cases you can have multiple people involved in the process design within a BPM system or the process modeling, the tools can get quite technical, and you don't have the ability to have really everybody involved in there. So I don't know if you have any other insights, Dominic, from your side, but I thought that was kind of an interesting question, an interesting idea to say, well, if we had a Venn diagram that showed how BPA and BPMS overlap, what would that look like?
That's a great response, yeah. So are there more questions?
I think everybody's getting ready for the football.
Yeah, I believe so. So, of course, you always have the option, maybe let me jump back, you always have the option to contact us through the marketing@processlive.com email address. So if you have any question in the future, so don't miss the chance and get one of the welcome packages here as well. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Sandy and Jenny, for setting up this webinar. I want to thank you all for the participation today, and I hope that we will see you again in one of the next webinars. So to all, have a nice day, and thank you. Goodbye.